Yeah, I'm so sorry I'm late. I have been like running all day long, but I have to apologize. I'm just going to start talking because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to stay live because honestly, I'm exhausted. Hey Spencer, hey Blue. It probably won't be a lot of people in this live stream, which is good. Hopefully we can have some dialogue in the comments. But I really wanted to get this out. This is probably going to be just part one because this is a long live with a lot of information, right? Now, let's talk about it for a second. I want to play this clip for you guys before we get started. My thumbnail was was what really inspired me to do this live stream. And hold on one second, let me pull it up because I really want. Okay, I really want y'all to hear it before and I'm going to try to play everything so you can hear it. Oh Lord. Hold on. Give me a second. I got to get it together, honey. I got to get it together. Hold on. Hey everybody. Hello. So I came in here to have this conversation about like how I think, how I feel. My feelings and my emotions are being demonized. I don't really care because I'm considering the source. Um, but that's not a direction that I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stay right on the path of what I want to talk about. Okay, so um man and religion came before Adam and Eve, okay? Scientists say that this world is billions of years old. Now I'm going based upon archaeological finds, anthropology, science, history, and things like that. So don't take any of what I'm saying personally. I'm not asking anybody to change their minds or their way of thought. I'm just giving my perspective on what I've learned throughout these last few years. And it's really interesting. Hmm, I didn't want to go this in depth with the content because I don't want to appear like I'm trying to change people's minds or anything because I'm not. And we're all adults here. Everybody can make their own decisions. And I believe that a lot of people are just curious, period. There's a lot of people wondering why things just are not adding up and why the bad guy always seems to win, or why the bad guys always seem to be in control. Why power is so evil, and then when you get someone that is powerful that can do good things, those things are blocked. So and a lot of people are realizing, even my kids, they were telling me, they were like, I'm finally seeing what you've been saying all along, that religion is political and politics is about religion. And I think it's this president in this time that is showing people that it's weaponized. Okay. Now, he's not the first ruler to do it. Like I said, Hitler has done it. Every ruler has used some form of coercion, and usually it's biblical or spiritual or from a higher place, or they had an epiphany or a revelation, you know. And that's pretty much how it's happened throughout history. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Constantine. If any of you guys know about Constantine and how Well, you know what? I'm not going to talk. We're going to let this talk. So it says religion came before Adam and Eve. As archaeological evidence shows that religious practices existed tens of thousands of years before biblical texts, before the biblical text of Adam and Eve was written. So tens of thousands of years, archaeologists have found manuscripts and books and all kinds of things written on goat skins, all kinds of stuff about religion, about God, and about a higher power. So, if these things are older than the story of Adam and Eve, which is the creation story that's in the Bible, life had to exist before Adam and Eve. Okay? So, let me go here. And we're about to get into it. So let me play this first video.
Jesus was not a Christian. I'm sorry to announce that to all you Christians listening to this. And I am one of.
How many of you, did any of you realize that Jesus, Adam, and Eve were not Christians? They were not Christians. So I'm going to let him tell basically how this all kind of started, and then we're going to get deep into it. Jesus was against religion, was against the church, was against the weaponization of God's power and the weaponization of basically everything that the church is doing right now. Jesus was against that. At least that's what he says in the Bible. That's what is said in the Bible. So,
You, but Jesus was not a Christian. Seems a strange thing to say, doesn't it? But the actual word Christian and the language of Christian and the religion of Christianity was invented by us, not by God, not by Jesus. All religions, all tribes, all groups were invented by men, invented by humans, not by divinity, not by God. And I think it's just worth saying it to you in the way I said it, so that we remind ourselves as Christians that Jesus is not.
now this is a Christian talking. This is a man that still identifies as Christian. Now, what I say about like the Bible and things like that, you can eat the meat and spit out the bones, and you're going to see that that's how it's been done throughout the creation of time. You eat the meat and you spit out the bones. Okay?
One of us. Sometimes I think we relate to Jesus as a Christian instead of relate to him as Jesus. We define and confine and contain him
In a book.
to Christianity.
Right.
And we relate to him in the same way that we relate to the church. And we get mixed up between Jesus and the church.
Hello.
And we start to have a relationship with Jesus in the same way that we have a relationship with the church, i.e., it becomes methodical, it becomes systemized, institutionalized, it becomes a time and a place. And that's all religion is, you know. We were designed, I've said this at other times, but worth saying it again as I make this point to you, that human beings were designed to be spiritual, not religious. Religion is organized spirituality. Spirituality means you can appreciate and see God in a tree or a flower or a stream or a mountain or somewhere in nature. You can engage and encounter God through that just as much, if not more, than you can often in church. That's the difference between religion and that version of being spiritual and spirituality, which means that you can have a spiritual experience anywhere at any time, because we are spiritual beings. We are not religious beings. And I think that's another part of the mistake we make in the way that we make God in our image rather than we allow him to make us in his image when we make him a Christian, when we make him white, when we make him black, when we make him male or we make him female, when we make God a Democrat or Republican, or in my case, Labour or Conservative in the UK, when we make God one of our group or we make him one of their group, we are making him in our image. We are becoming the potter and making.
And listen, what he's saying is so deep, because God makes us. I'm gonna share it with you. I'm gonna put it on my community wall right now. Every video, every single video that I play, I'm going to post on my community wall. Okay. Every single one that I discussed tonight, and when I come back to do part 2, we're going to share a whole lot more, because we're going to go back into the African ancestry. We're going to go into all of the religions that were used as part of the Bible. We're going to go to the tribes and the things that they believed in. We're going to go to Iran and Egypt, and it's so much information. And when you go back in history, these things are documented. So it's not just something that you have to have just faith and believe in. You can actually go back and research everything that I'm about to talk about tonight. It's going to be easy for you to go back and find out for yourself. Hold on one second. Let me share it out. Let me share it. Okay.
Making him the clay rather than we are.
What I was saying before I shared it out was, what he's saying is so powerful, because God is in everything. God is not just in us. And I think that if we knew God's the totality, you can't even conceptualize what the totality of God is, because we don't even know every living creature that's in the deepest parts of the ocean. We don't know the birds that fly that have not been named yet. It's so much about this planet that human beings don't even know yet. You know what I'm saying? And that is God. God is in absolutely everything. So when he says that you're trying to make God in your image, in an image of man, like being a jealous God or a vengeful God and all of those things, you're trying to turn God into man instead of understanding what God said. I create you in my image. My image. That means everything. Trees, the sky, the water, everything is God. And you are created in the image of God. God is everything. Everything that you see. Everything. And so you limit yourself by thinking that God is this man, or that's going to come down and save you, or going to do all of this manly things, like creating mansions with streets paved with gold, material things. You even make God a material God, like the kings and the rulers were. You know what I'm saying? You make God about things.
The clay, and he is the potter.
Right.
He is the maker, the designer, the sculptor, the artist, the shaper, and we are the ones that have been painted and shaped and worked on. So Jesus is not a Christian. He's not a joiner. He's not the head of a group. He's not the head of an organization. He's not the superintendent, the district leader, the apostle, the pastor. And I think we sometimes shift psychologically those labels to him as if he's one of the people we call that on earth. He's not. He is bigger than the church. He existed before the church. He will exist after the church. And I'm saying this to you because I don't want you to, and I think, pastoring for 30 years plus, I know that I slipped into this blind spot of thinking God was one of us. He is one of me. He is one of our church. He's part of our church. And that denominational exclusivity, tribal thing kicks in. And I've, woken to that 20 years ago now, well into my pastoring. I didn't figure this out when I stopped pastoring. This genie came out of the lamp while I was still pastoring. And I'm glad I had another sort of 12 years after that discovery of building a new kind of church around those new versions of me and those new awarenesses and awakenings in me. So, Jesus is not a Christian. You may be a Christian, but I hope you know what you mean by that. I hope you know what you mean is you have chosen to be a follower of Christ. And that may include a Christian experience, but it is not only that. It is way bigger than that. Don't make Jesus join your church. Don't confine Jesus to your Christianity. Don't think that you know all there is to know about Jesus because you're a Christian and no one else has a valid relationship or perspective or understanding of him. Only Christians. I think we Christians, and especially the right-wing evangelical version of us, have given us a bad name. We have made him this ranting, finger-pointing, judgmental, here's what I'm against God. And we've made him in our image, and that's not who he is. So Jesus is not a Christian. Now, that shocking statement that you heard me say earlier, I hope now you've calmed down and realized is a great wisdom for life for us. Jesus is not a Christian. What a lovely thought. I'm glad he's bigger than that. And I want you to be too.
That was powerful. That was powerful. And when I heard that, I said, oh my God. That's pretty much what I've been trying to say. It's like, stop trying to put people in a box because they don't feel the same way that you feel, because they don't see things the same way that you see them. It's not fair to anybody on this planet. And you're going to find out why it's not fair. Because a lot of the things that are in the Bible were taken from someplace else. A lot of Christianity, a lot of the religion that is called Christianity was taken from other religions that existed before Adam and Eve were created, before the story of creation in the Bible. It far outdates it. So I want y'all to listen to this, because if any of you guys are familiar with, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Constantine. We're getting ready to get into this. Hold on one second. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about Constantine and the politics behind the Council of Nicaea. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the Council of Nicaea, but you're going to become familiar with the Council of Nicaea from watching my channel if you're not already familiar with it. Now, I don't know if, a lot of people, they're really, really into the Bible. Then you should be into this level of history. Maybe you haven't gone back that far. Maybe just stick to the book. I don't know. Not sure, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. But I want to play this first right here. I want y'all to listen to this.
Powerful being. Imagine a time long ago, between 1500 to 1000 BCE, in ancient Persia.
BCE means before Common Era. But that's when you're talking non-biblical speech. Hopefully you guys can follow me. BCE means before the Bible was created. So this is thousands of years before the Bible was created that this man is about to talk about, okay? I'm going to share this one out too. But I want y'all to hear it. Hold on one second.
Here, a prophet named Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra, founded a fascinating monotheistic religion called Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism, okay, was the first monolithic religion, and Christianity is a monolithic religion. Judaism is a monolithic religion. Islam, Muslim Islam, that's a monolithic religion, and that means one God. Okay, so pay close attention to what this man is about to say, because this religion, like I said, existed thousands of years before even Adam and Eve. Okay. Okay.
This faith centers on one supreme deity, Ahura Mazda, which means Lord of Wisdom. Ahura Mazda is seen as the creator and sustainer of everything. Zoroastrianism encourages its followers to live by three core principles: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. It's also known as Mazda Yasna, which translates to devotion to Mazda, and Mazdaism. This religion evolved from the earlier polytheistic beliefs of ancient Persia, where Ahura Mazda was the chief god among many. Much like Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion viewed life as a constant battle between light and darkness, good and evil. Zoroastrianism became the state religion of several powerful empires, including the Achaemenid Empire, the Parthian Empire, and it reached its peak under the Sasanian Empire. During the Sasanian era, a different branch of the faith, known as Zoroastrianism, also developed. This period marked the height of Zoroastrian influence. However, things changed dramatically after the Muslim Arab invasion in 651 CE.
Listen to this. Things changed when they were invaded, i.e., colonized. Listen very closely.
Zoroastrians faced persecution, their faith was suppressed, and many of their religious sites were destroyed or converted into mosques. Despite these challenges, Zoroastrianism survived and is still practiced today, albeit by a smaller number of followers. And the early Persians likely had a polytheistic belief system before they arrived in what is now Iran around the 3rd millennium BCE. Their religion was influenced by the Elamites and the people of Susiana, who were already settled in the region. They believed in many gods, with Ahura Mazda as the chief deity guiding and protecting humanity from dark forces led by the spirit deity Angra Mainyu. Humanity's purpose, according to this faith, was to follow Ahura Mazda's teachings and resist Angra Mainyu's temptations. The first humans, Mashya and Mashanag, lived in paradise until they were deceived by Angra Mainyu.
Listen, if you pay close attention, the first two humans that this God created lived in paradise. Keep on listening, because you're going to find that this religion is basically different names for how the Bible starts out too in Genesis. So if you pay close attention to what he's saying.
Believing Angra Mainyu's lies, they doubted Ahura Mazda and were expelled from paradise, condemned to a world of hardship. But their descendants could still lead meaningful lives by staying loyal to Ahura Mazda. Without written scriptures, the specifics of early Zoroastrian rituals are unclear. However, later Zoroastrian texts provide some insights. There was a priestly class known as the Magi, and gods were worshipped at outdoor shrines called fire temples, where a sacred fire was always kept burning. Unlike the elaborate temples of Egypt or Mesopotamia, Zoroastrian worship was more about maintaining these sacred fires and less about grand structures. The clergy, including groups like the Karpins and the Kawis, played a significant role in society. They performed sacrifices, likely of food, grains, and valuable objects, in exchange for intercession with the gods. This practice made the priests some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in Persian society. And now let's talk about Zoroaster himself. Born to noble Persian parents, Porzespa and Dugdeva, Zoroaster grew up in a well-to-do family. His father was
Now this is who Zoroastrianists believe their Messiah was. Now comes the Messiah, and you're going to hear about his life and how he traveled, and you're going to understand that it sounds a lot like Jesus of the Bible, thousands of years before. Listen.
a priest, given that Zoroaster became one himself, and it was common for sons to follow in their father's footsteps. Zoroaster had 4 brothers, but not much else is known about his early life. By the age of 15, Zoroaster was already a priest, likely assisting an older clergyman. At 20, he left his family to pursue his religious career. One of the prevalent rituals at that time involved the Karpan priests performing animal sacrifices, which Zoroaster found deeply troubling. This revulsion would later shape his teachings. At 30, during the spring festival, possibly the New Year celebration known as Nowruz, Zoroaster had a profound vision by the riverbank. A celestial being named Vohu Maha appeared, sent by Ahura Mazda, and revealed a startling truth. The priests were worshipping false gods. There was only one true God, Ahura Mazda, who did not demand blood sacrifices but ethical behavior. This vision marked the beginning of Zoroaster's mission to spread this new revelation. However, his message was not welcomed. The priests rejected him, and his life was threatened, forcing him to flee. Despite these challenges, Zoroaster remained steadfast, constantly praying for guidance from Ahura Mazda. His prayers and questions were later compiled into the Zoroastrian scriptures, the Avesta. Zoroaster eventually reached the court of King Vishtaspa, where he engaged in a theological debate with the king's priests. Although he won the debate, his teachings threatened the established order, and he was imprisoned. While in jail, Zoroaster miraculously healed Vishtaspa's favorite horse, which convinced the king to release him and listen to his message again. Vishtaspa became Zoroaster's first convert, and as a king, his conversion led many others to follow suit. Zoroaster didn't write down his teachings, nor did...
Well, he's telling in this story, they're telling who the creator was. It just wasn't God. Whenever he says the God so-and-so or the God Zoroaster, the name of the God, they're saying the name of the God that created mankind. And it's the same story as Adam and Eve. It's just a different time. It's just a different names for the God. His name is Zoroastria, and Jesus's name was Jesus. So it's just a different time and different names, different tribes, different areas of the world. So that's why it sounds different by the names, but it's the same story if you listen to it. Real good.
His early followers. Instead, his words were memorized and passed down orally through rituals for generations until they were finally written down.
Now listen to this. Isn't that just how the story of Jesus happened? Jesus didn't write anything down, nor did his disciples write anything down. And what a lot of people don't know is that if you go back and if you study how the Bible came to be, you will know that the scriptures and the books of the Bible were anonymous in the beginning. There were no authors. And the reason that they changed and put the names of disciples and added names to it was to give it credibility so people would believe it. This is going to get really, really deep, y'all. It's going to get really deep. So we're going kind of down a rabbit hole, but it's a rabbit hole that you'll be able to understand if you know scripture, if you know the Bible, you know how things happen.
the time of the Achaemenid Empire, Zoroastrianism had spread widely, with the ruling class being Zoroastrians. Zoroaster continued preaching until his death at around 77, either from old age or, as later sources suggest, assassination by a priest of the old religion. And
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this video out on my community wall too, so you guys will be able to watch it if you want to. I'm going to put reaction on it too. And you'll be able to find all of the information about the religion Zoroastrianism. Now, the thing that I want to say before we go on to the next video is, in the Bible, it says the road is narrow, right? I want you to think about it. It says, in the Bible, it says the road is narrow. Christianity is the largest religion in the world. It's the widest road. Christianity has, God, I think they said tens of thousands of different denominations in Christianity throughout the world. Throughout the world. There is 2,600,000,000 people who are Christian around the world. It is the largest religion in the world, and it is the most diverse. And everybody believes that their path is the right way. Everybody. Do we have a mod in the do we have a mod in the bushes or anything that can put this on, that could put this chat on subscribers only? If y'all could just put it on subscribers only. Okay. And let's just pray for the demonic forces that want to make this about them. Let's pray that they find healing, that they find help, that they find true salvation, because, baby, I can't do that. I can't do that stuff anymore. I just can't, so. Oh, Lord. Let's get into this one, though. Now we're getting ready to get into the talks about the Bible and how it came to be. We're going to talk about Christian. Well, no, not the Bible. We don't talk about Christianity. All right.
Believers today still treat as sacred.
Hold on.
The Council of Nicaea is often remembered as a great spiritual gathering where early Christians came together to settle their theological differences and agree on the truth of their faith. That is the story usually told. But when you strip away the layers of pious storytelling, what you find is less about divine guidance and more about politics, control, and power. The meeting in Nicaea in the year 325 was not a gathering of men inspired by God, but a carefully orchestrated political strategy by the Roman Emperor Constantine, a ruler who understood that
325, that's after Jesus was executed. So this is after the thousands of years of multiple tribes, multiple religions, multiple communities, multiple biblical scriptures, not biblical because they weren't called Bibles. The Bible is the only Bible, the Western canon is the only one, but they had different versions of their spiritual beliefs and teachings. And it was thousands of them before the Bible. But I want you to listen to how they describe how the Bible came together and how the scripture came together, rather.
Religion was one of the most effective tools for unifying an empire
Listen.
that was on the brink of fragmentation. To understand,
Said religion was one of the most effective tools for bringing together an empire that was on the brink of devastation, pretty much. So listen to what he's saying.
and why Constantine called the council, you have to remember what the Roman world looked like in the early 4th century. The empire was vast, stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It was also divided, exhausted by decades of civil wars, invasions, and economic decline. Constantine himself had only recently secured power after years of bloody conflict against rival emperors. He needed stability, and he needed it fast. Religion was the obvious place to turn. At the time, Christianity was growing rapidly, but it was not unified. It was a patchwork of rival groups, each with their own ideas about who Jesus was, what his teachings meant, and how people should worship. That diversity was a problem for a ruler like Constantine. A fractured religion could never provide the political glue he needed. So the emperor stepped in, not to find truth, but to create order. The main controversy that pushed Constantine to act was the dispute between Arius, a priest from Alexandria, and his opponents led by Athanasius. Arius argued that Jesus, while divine in some sense, was not equal to God the Father. For him, Christ was a created being, exalted above humans but still subordinate to God. His opponents rejected this idea, insisting that Jesus was fully divine, eternal, and equal to the Father. To us today, this might sound like an abstract debate about words, but in the 4th century, it was explosive. Entire congregations were divided. Bishops denounced each other, and riots broke out in cities. The theological fight was tearing communities apart, and Constantine realized it could also tear his empire apart. The council was his solution, a political summit disguised as a religious gathering.
Are you listening to that? A political summit disguised as a political gathering. Before we continue to play that, I want y'all to listen to something.
Donald Trump is portraying himself as a religious savior. He says Election Day will be Christian Visibility Day. Trump has repeatedly compared his criminal trials to the crucifixion of Jesus, promoted videos calling his re-election, quote, the most important moment in human history, and that describe him as a divinely appointed ruler.
A shepherd to mankind who won't ever leave nor forsake them. So God made Trump.
He claims to be a holy warrior against an imaginary attack on Christianity.
They want to tear down crosses, but no one will be touching the cross of Christ under the Trump administration. I swear to you.
He's even selling his own version of the Bible.
We must make America pray again.
Trump is playing to a rising white Christian nationalist movement within the Republican Party.
I say it proudly, we should be Christian nationalists.
Christian nationalists believe that the law of the land is not the Constitution, but instead the law of God, as they interpret it. Trump's supporters are increasingly overt in their calls to replace democracy with a MAGA theocracy.
The church is supposed to direct the government, and I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk.
We're meant to be a Christian nation. We should be a Christian nation.
Welcome to the end of democracy. We're here to overthrow it completely. We didn't get all the way there on January 6th, but we will endeavor to get rid of it and replace it with this right here.
That was a cross he was holding. The idea the will of voters is irrelevant because God has anointed Trump was a recurring message in the efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Now I'm going to stop it right there because we're getting ready to listen to how Constantine brought all of these separate facets of Christianity together, but it wasn't by choice. It was by force. How Constantine brought them together and took over Christianity. Listen, because this is deep.
Congregations were divided. Bishops denounced each other, and riots broke out in cities. The theological fight was tearing communities apart, and Constantine realized it could also tear his empire apart. The council was his solution, a political summit disguised as a religious gathering. What makes the Council of Nicaea so significant is not that it produced a creed, but that it revealed how religion can be molded by political needs. Constantine did not care which side was right. He was not interested in the subtleties of theology. What he wanted was consensus, because consensus meant unity, and unity meant stability. The bishops who attended the council were not free to simply debate truth. They were operating under the shadow of imperial authority. Constantine presided over the meeting like a judge, encouraging compromise, but making it clear that endless debate would not be tolerated. In the end, the council condemned Arius and declared that Jesus was of the same substance as the Father, a phrase that would become central to Orthodox Christianity. But the decision was not the result of divine inspiration. It was the outcome of political pressure, imperial influence, and the fear of being on the wrong side of the emperor.
Are you listening?
When you look closely, the creed that emerged from Nicaea reflects less about what early Christians naturally believed and more about what Constantine needed them to believe. By declaring Jesus fully divine and equal to God, the council eliminated ambiguity. It gave the empire a clear and simple doctrine around which to rally. Ambiguity breeds division.
Now, a lot of people don't know that at the Council of Nicaea, they invited almost 300 leaders of different religious sectors, right? It was over 300 from different parts of the world. And they had multiple gods that they wanted to make the leaders of Christianity. Multiple. It wasn't just Jesus. They had Zeus. It was so many people that they wanted to say, this is going to be our shining star for this religion. You know, it's going to be this person. Arius said that it shouldn't be Jesus because he didn't feel like Jesus. He felt like Jesus was not the Messiah. He felt like Jesus was like a prophet, a preacher, pretty much like the first one because they knew the history of the religion. So they weren't looking at Jesus as the Messiah. They were looking at him as a prophet that led them to the truth. But Jesus was a man and had walked the earth, right? So his narrative worked better for Constantine. You're gonna have to listen and pay close attention to what they're saying.
But a sharp definition allows the state to enforce loyalty. From that point forward, to question the creed was not just to question theology, it was to defy the emperor's chosen settlement. Heresy became not only a religious error, but also a political crime. That blending of religion and state power was one of the most lasting legacies of Nicaea, and it set the stage for centuries of persecution, control, and suppression of dissent. One of the striking things about the Council of Nicaea is how little it had to do with faith as people actually lived it. Ordinary Christians at the time did not sit around debating Greek philosophical terms about substance and essence. Most of them were struggling to survive in a harsh world of famine, disease, and political upheaval. The council was not about their concerns. It was about bishops seeking influence and an emperor seeking stability. This tells us something crucial about the history of religion. Doctrines are often shaped not by the needs of ordinary people, but by the interests of those in power. The creed was not a grassroots expression of faith. It was a top-down decree imposed on communities that often had very different beliefs. It is also important to see how much was excluded at Nicaea. early Christianity was diverse.
Listen.
Some groups saw Jesus primarily as a human prophet, others as a mystical revealer, and still others as a divine being who only appeared human. There were gospels circulating that told very different stories about him. But at Nicaea, all of that diversity was flattened. The creed drew a line between orthodoxy and heresy, and once that line was drawn, everything outside of it was condemned.
So if you had a different opinion prior to Nicaea, you could be killed for it. If you, and it wasn't, like he said, it wasn't a divine order. It was a order from power. Just like Trump is claiming to be sent by God now. A rapist with 32 felonies is claiming to be sent by God.
Texts that did not fit were suppressed. Teachers who did not conform were marginalized or persecuted. A religion that had once thrived on diversity and debate was narrowed down to a rigid formula, not because that formula was true, but because it was useful to the state. If you trace the aftermath of Nicaea, you see how fragile this settlement really was. The debates did not end. In fact, they raged on for decades, with emperors and bishops continually revisiting the question of Christ's nature. Arius was exiled, then recalled, then condemned again. Even Constantine himself wavered and, according to some sources, was baptized on his deathbed by a bishop sympathetic to the Arian position. That inconsistency shows that the council did not really resolve the theological issue. What it did was establish the principle that theology could be decided by imperial decree. The precedent was set. The emperor had the right to convene councils, dictate outcomes, and enforce orthodoxy. That blending of throne and altar would dominate Christian history for more than 1,000 years. What gets lost in the traditional telling is that Nicaea was less about discovering eternal truth than about building an institution. Before the council, Christianity was a movement with many voices. After the council, it became an institution with one official voice, backed by state power. That shift is why Nicaea matters. It marks the moment when the religion was re-engineered to serve political ends. The creed was not just a statement of belief. It was a tool of governance. By forcing bishops to sign it, Constantine turned religion into a mechanism for testing loyalty. Those who signed were allies of the state. Those who refused were enemies. Faith was transformed into a political boundary, and that transformation...
Now, let me ask y'all, like, don't you guys see that even today? And I, because I was raised Christian. Don't you see that like imperialistic view of Christianity where like if you don't believe the way that we tell you to believe, if you don't believe like I believe, then you're going to hell, you're going to die, you're going to have you're an evil person, you're the devil, you're demonic. It's pretty much the same way. They just don't, well, I was going to say that they don't kill you, but they still do. So in certain countries, they kill you. So it's kind of like God gave us free will and religion takes it away from us. It's the most bipolar thing that I've ever seen. In the Bible, they say, oh, God gave you free will. God gave everybody free will. But religion is the thing that takes it away from everybody. If you don't believe this way, then you're going to hell. That's not free will. That's not free will at all. So I'm just saying,
would have consequences far beyond Constantine's lifetime. Even the setting of the council tells us something. Nicaea was not chosen for spiritual reasons. It was chosen because it was convenient for the emperor. It was close to Constantinople, his new capital, and it allowed him to oversee the proceedings without traveling far.
Listen.
The bishops were housed at imperial expense, dined at imperial banquets, and deliberated under the emperor's watchful eye. This was not a free council of equals. It was a gathering staged and managed by the state. Every detail reinforced the message. Christianity was no longer an underground movement persecuted by Rome. It was now under the wing of imperial power, and that power had the final say. The irony is that Constantine himself was never a deeply committed Christian.
Listen.
He continued to honor pagan rituals.
Just like King James was never like King James in a different way, because he didn't follow Christianity the way in the New Testament way. It was still the wrath and the hatred and the vitriol. So
throughout his life, he kept the title of Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of the Roman state religion. He minted coins with the image of the sun god Sol Invictus, even after convening the council. His use of Christianity was pragmatic, not devout. He saw in the religion a way to consult.
He said he minted coins with God's imagery on it. Y'all better look at y'all money. Who's on your money? Presidents. Don't we call them dead presidents? Who's on your money? Rulers are on your money. And then they have the nerve to say, in God we trust. In God we trust. Okay.
Validate his rule, not a path to personal salvation. That makes the Council of Nicaea even more revealing. The man who dictated the direction of Christian doctrine was not acting out of faith, but out of political calculation. And yet, his decisions shaped the core beliefs of billions of people for centuries to come. This raises an uncomfortable question. If the nature of God and Christ was decided in a political council overseen by an emperor who was not fully committed to the faith, what does that say about the authenticity of those beliefs? If eternal truths were determined by the needs of empire, can they really be eternal truths at all? The Creed of Nicaea is recited in churches to this day, as if it came directly from divine revelation. But in reality, it came from a council room filled with political maneuvering, fear of division, and the heavy hand of imperial authority. That gap between the story told and the reality behind it is one of the most striking features of religious history. The council also reveals how easily religious debates become tools for personal ambition. The bishops who attended were not neutral thinkers searching for truth. They were men deeply embedded in networks of rivalry, patronage, and ambition. Many of them saw.
I want y'all to listen to this closely, because I'm about to play another clip about the Trump supporters.
The council as a chance to gain influence in the new imperial church. Supporting the winning side meant access to imperial favor, financial support, and prestige. Opposing it meant exile, disgrace, or worse. That atmosphere shaped every decision. The language chosen for the creed was not only about theology, but about excluding rivals and securing advantage. The famous phrase, "of the same substance," was carefully selected because it put Arius and his supporters outside the boundary of orthodoxy. It was a political weapon disguised as a theological statement. When you study the records of the council, you notice how much the debates relied on philosophical jargon borrowed from Greek thought. Words like essence and substance were not terms Jesus ever used. They were not part of the vocabulary of fishermen, farmers, or ordinary people. They were the language of philosophers and elites. This reveals another layer of the council's politics. It turned a popular movement rooted in simple stories and ethical teachings into a religion of complex abstractions that only specialists could interpret. That shift increased the power of bishops and theologians. Ordinary believers became dependent on elites to tell them what to believe.
Now, what's so interesting is that when we talked about it earlier, that Jesus was not a Christian, Jesus did not believe in the church for that reason, and thought that people should have their own personal relationships with God. And a lot of people use the verse, that the only way to salvation is through me, what Jesus said. It wasn't, I'm not even going to explain that one yet, because we're going to get to that one later in the next live stream, because I have clips that support everything that I'm going to say about that. So I don't want to be confusing all of this.
Religion became less about lived experience and more about adherence to formulas crafted by councils under imperial oversight. The political consequences of Nicaea were immediate. Arius and a handful of bishops who refused to sign the creed were exiled. Their writings were ordered to be burned. This was the beginning of a pattern. Disagreement was not tolerated, and diversity of belief was treated as dangerous. By criminalizing theological dissent, Constantine made the church into an arm of imperial policy. The same mechanisms that had been used to suppress political opponents were now applied to religious ones. What had once been a movement of communities loosely connected by shared stories became an authoritarian institution with sharp boundaries and punishments for crossing them. From that moment on, religion was no longer just about belief. It was about obedience. One of the most revealing aspects of the council is how little evidence there is of divine clarity. If God were truly guiding the process, you might expect a clear and lasting resolution. Instead, the aftermath was chaos. Within a few decades, the empire—
And the aftermath is still chaos. It's just multi-billion-dollar chaos now. Just like it created wealth, that chaos created wealth for the individuals who spread it the loudest and spread it the furthest. It's doing that today. All of these television evangelists living in multi-million-dollar homes and feeding off of the congregation and doing fake healings and all of this stuff that they're doing today. They did it back then. They did it back then. It is still chaos.
Have you ever wondered if Adam—
Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on.
Obedience. One of the most revealing aspects of the council is how little evidence there is of divine clarity. If God were truly guiding the process, you might expect a clear and lasting resolution.
Yeah, you might.
Instead, the aftermath was chaos. Within a few decades, the empire was still divided between Nicene Christians and Arians. Entire regions, especially among the Germanic tribes who later entered the empire, adopted Arian Christianity rather than the Nicene version.
I know that's right, Blue.
Emperors after Constantine repeatedly called new councils to settle disputes, often reversing previous decisions. At one point, the majority of bishops in the Eastern Empire rejected the Nicene Creed. If the council had really revealed eternal truth, how could it be overturned and debated so many times in the years that followed? What this shows is that theology was not discovered, but negotiated, rewritten depending on who held power. It is also striking to note the role of violence and coercion. Christianity before Constantine had been marked by persecution at the hands of Roman authorities. After Nicaea, the tables turned. Now Christians persecuted other Christians.
Listen!
Those who clung to different interpretations were harassed, silenced, or expelled. The same empire that once tried to stamp out Christianity.
Those who clung to different interpretations. What God would create a religion that's supposed to be the only path to him that is so confusing and so divisive and so mean? It's not too many. Listen, when you talking about faith and you talk about you don't even listen. People hate you because you don't believe the same way that they believe. You can believe in God, you can believe in Jesus, but if you don't believe in that book, you the devil. You got to believe in that book, and you got to believe that book, even though anthropologists have shown, science has shown, history has shown that the book has been manufactured, rewritten, and the story has been retold. Changed from leader after leader after leader. Trump just did it. Has his own Bible. That Bible is going to be part of historical documentation. That's going to be another version of the Bible that people can read. And Donald Trump wrote it. Somebody who has 34 felonies and pictures of himself after being with underage girls. Come on now. Come on. And the Bible that was used for hundreds of years. No, I'm not even going to say hundreds, because the African slave trade from Africa to the United States, that wasn't the first time that the Bible was used to enslave people. The Bible has always, from its inception, been used to support slavery. It's still being used today to support it. God didn't write that book. At least that's just my opinion.
Christianity now used Christianity to stamp out dissent. This transformation exposes a truth often hidden in religious history. The persecuted can quickly become persecutors.
Now, wait. Let me say this. When I say God didn't write that book, I do believe that some men, women, prophets that were inspired by God, the inspiration came from God. Some of those words have to be inspiration because they're so freeing. They have to be real. But it was rewritten so many times by man and weaponized so many times by man. And it's not one consistent book. It's taken from different tribes and different areas all over this world. It's pretty much plagiarized, and the Western nations, East started, but the Western nations plagiarized it even further, and we got Trump. Now Trump is the second coming of Christ, or sent by God, another Messiah. In order to be sent by God, that makes you a Messiah. A Messiah. Listen to this.
Donald Trump is portraying himself.
Hold on.
That the law of the land.
With this right here.
That was a cross he was holding. The idea that the will of voters is irrelevant because God has anointed Trump was a recurring message in the efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Because it is not Joe Biden that rules this country. Jesus Christ is the king of everything in this world. Christ is king! Christ is king! Christ is king!
In previous videos, I've highlighted how MAGA Republicans have embraced core elements of fascism. The combination of fascism and Christian nationalism is called Christofascism, a term first used half a century ago by the theologian Dorothy Zola. Fascists rise to power by characterizing their opponents as subhuman. Christofascists take it a step further by casting opponents as not just subhuman, but actually demonic.
People like Nick. Demonic. You weaponizing the word and calling people demonic. You're not God. You're not a higher being. How can any human being say that somebody else is demonic? You can say people are evil, that they've done evil things, but you're saying that people are the devil, they're demonic, and they're going to hell, or they're a part of hell. That is beyond. That's what the colonizers do. That's what they've done since creation.
Pelosi, she's a demon.
Framing opponents as enemies of God makes violence against them not only seem justifiable,
exactly,
but divinely sanctioned and almost inevitable.
We are going to. So anybody who uses God against somebody, or saying, oh, you're not God enough, or you're not good enough, or you don't. Somebody When have I ever said that I don't believe in God? You know, but still, even people who don't believe in God don't deserve to be targeted by people who do. Because didn't God give us free will? Free will doesn't come with control. It's free will. Just like if Jesus died for your sins, it's not Christianity's right to beat somebody over the head every day with their sins. It's not your right. God didn't give you that right. I ain't never heard nothing anywhere that said Christians or any other religion has the right to beat somebody else over the head with their own sins. God didn't say kneel to no man, praise no preacher. God didn't say you got to. I didn't see anywhere, even in the Bible, I didn't see anywhere in the Bible that says you got to follow the Bible. When they were talking about law, they were talking about law of the land back then. And they weaponized scripture just like Donald Trump and the evangelicals are doing today. That's what they did, and that's what they're doing now.
Put on the armor of God. And maybe strap on a Glock on the side of us just in case.
Listen, she said put on the armor of God and maybe strap on a Glock. Strap on a Glock. Somebody sent me a clip yesterday, y'all, of a church, and they took all of their AR-15s. The whole church was holding AR-15s. The entire church. They took all of their AR-15s to the church to be blessed. Blessed for what? They say war is coming. War is coming.
When we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. And these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be out.
They trying to bring back the death penalty for you believing in something different, or you not believing exactly the. And a lot of Christians gonna die too if that happens, because if you're not believing the same way the evangelicals think, then they think you deserve to die too. They think you a heretic. They think you a blasphemer. They think that you're evil. You're not powerful. The only thing that's important to these people is power. God isn't really important. Power is. But the messed up part about all of this is they tied it into faith. Faith. And the one thing that these people, especially the people in the congregation, I'm not talking about the ministry, because in order to be ordained, you have to at least have some theology, right? So they know the truth. Their parishioners, they don't, and they faithful. They believe that every ounce of hatred that they feel for anybody else is justified because their God told them so. They believe that black bodies should fall, brown bodies should fall, even if they haven't done a darn thing wrong, they should fall. Why? Because they don't believe in God like they do.
Absolutely annihilated when we take power.
Christo-fascists want to strip away a wide range of rights Americans take for granted.
Listen.
Former Trump staffers involved in developing plans for a second Trump term have called for imposing biblical tests on immigration, overturning marriage equality, and restricting contraception.
Now, I had to play this one because this was done before Trump's second term. And I want y'all to ask yourselves in this chat, is Trump doing absolutely everything that he said he would do? I'm not talking about the good things that he said he would do. When he said that he was going to go after his enemies and all of that stuff, and he's going to take stuff away from people, and he's doing it every single day. And like I said in my last live, it's easier to tear something down than it is to build it back up. He's taking away things that it might take decades to repair, because it took decades to get there. It's mind-blowing to me that people don't care about just random rights. Your kids won't be able to go to school, where, hell, they might even take away the free, the public education system in totality, and say, hey, the church has got to teach the kids. You got to teach the kids in the church, or that's how they're going to teach their kids, or have private schools for their children, or schools that only whites can go to, schools that only evangelicals can go to. And people sitting around thinking that you cannot go back in time. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because you done forgot your history. You don't know it. You don't see it happening. But people that have studied history, or even like my mom, people who have lived some of this history, lived it, they see what's happening. And it's killing them emotionally. Hold on, let me finish playing this clip, and then we're going to get back to the other.
MAGA-aligned judges are already setting their dogma ahead of the Constitution. In his concurring opinion on the case that declared frozen embryos are people, Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Tom Parker cited God more than 40 times and quoted the book of Genesis and other religious texts. Nothing could be more un-American than the Christian nationalist vision. So many of America's founders came here as refugees seeking religious freedom. The framers of the Constitution were adamant that religion had no role in our government. The words God, Jesus, and Christ don't appear anywhere in the Constitution. And the very first words of the Bill of Rights are a promise that, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Christofascism, or any religion-based form of government, is a rejection of everything America has aspired to be: a secular, multiracial society whose inhabitants have come from everywhere, bound together by a faith in equal opportunity, democracy, and the rule of law. Beware.
I'm going to share that one out too. We can ready to get back to this.
What makes the Council of Nicaea so significant?
Okay, hold on.
He gave opening speeches urging unity. He entertained bishops in his palace, and he pushed for a resolution that would end conflict quickly. He did not leave the outcome to chance. Constantine understood that an empire needs clear symbols of unity, and he wanted the church to provide them. His role at Nicaea was not spiritual, but pragmatic. He acted like a statesman, managing factions, brokering deals, and applying pressure where needed. In doing so, he demonstrated how religion could be subordinated to political needs. And once that precedent was set, later, emperors and kings would follow it repeatedly.
Are you listening? Emperors and kings would follow it because they do their history, they do their research. I was listening to something, I don't know if I was listening to it or I read it somewhere, but they said that Trump, I think it was an old video that I watched. They said that Trump had his wife or one of his ex-wives or something said he had history books about Hitler on his nightstand. Yeah. Like he read about Hitler. I can't even imagine that man reading about finance or relationships or how to be a good parent or anything like that. But he read books about Hitler. You study who you aspire to be. You know what I'm saying? You study who you, especially unless you're doing like research on them or something, but if you aspire to be something or be like someone, you're going to study them. Watch every move that they make and try to emulate that, you know? And that's what Trump is doing. He studied Hitler. Get that in your brain. Get that in your psyche.
The politics of Nicaea extended beyond theology into practical matters. The council also addressed issues like the date of Easter.
Listen.
Different communities celebrated the holiday at different times, leading to confusion and division. By standardizing the date, Constantine aimed to impose uniformity. This might seem like a minor issue, but it shows the same principle. Religion was being reshaped to serve political stability. Unity in worship was seen as essential to unity in the empire. A fractured calendar could lead to fractured loyalty, so even the timing of festivals became a matter of imperial concern. Once again, faith was molded, but by the needs of governance. One of the most profound consequences of the council was the invention of heresy as a permanent category. Before Nicaea, disagreements existed, but there was no single central authority to declare one side orthodox and the other heretical.
Listen.
After Nicaea, that changed. Orthodoxy and heresy became political tools, with the creed as the dividing line. This new framework allowed rulers and bishops to label opponents not just as mistaken, but as dangerous enemies of the faith.
Of the faith.
That label justified suppression, exile, or even execution. Heresy became a crime against both God and empire, a category that would haunt history for centuries.
Forever.
From inquisitions to witch trials, the roots trace back to the precedent set at Nicaea.
That's how it is about the Bible now. You're a heretic. You're a hellion. You're the devil. You're evil. You don't believe in the Bible. It's embedded in us now, because we've heard it so much throughout history. You're evil if you don't believe the God that was force-fed to you, the Bible that was force-fed to you from before your conception, because it was force-fed to your ancestors, every single one of them, as they were ripped from everything that they knew. It was force-fed to our ancestors while they held on to their truth faith. While they were ripped away from their nations, their children, their families, everything that they knew, this was forced upon them. But I'm a heretic. I'm evil because I don't want to drink the devil's Kool-Aid. Because I don't want to believe that absolutely everything in a book that is proven throughout history to be weaponized against the people, not the richest of the people, the poorest of the people that are closest to God. The people that are true seekers of a personal and individual relationship with the Most High. That was ripped away from us. And people in the Western world will look at people like me. You're a heretic. You're evil. You don't want to believe everything that's in this weapon that was used against your people for thousands of years. Not hundreds, thousands. And it's still being used today. Keep listening.
Yeah. Truth defined by decree, enforced by power. It is also significant that the Creed of Nicaea focused so heavily on defining Jesus' divinity, but said almost nothing about his teachings. The Sermon on the Mount, the parables, the ethical instructions,
Listen.
none of these were at the heart of the debate. Instead, the Creed concentrated on metaphysical claims about Jesus' relationship to God.
Listen.
This emphasis reveals the shift in priorities. Religion was less about guiding behavior and more about enforcing agreement on abstract definitions. That suited the needs of empire. Ethics might inspire resistance to injustice.
Did you hear that? Ethics, morals, boundaries might inspire resistance. A need to never bend the knee to the master. It might be embedded in the people once they find out where they really came from. Once you find out where you came from, once you find out what you made of, and I'm not just talking about Black people, I'm talking about God's people. Once you find out what is already in you, you won't need no book. You won't need your master's book.
But metaphysical formulas could be used as loyalty tests. By reducing faith to assent to a creed, Constantine turned religion into a tool for identifying insiders and outsiders. It became a badge of allegiance rather than a guide to living.
Listen.
When later historians describe the council, they often highlight the grandeur of the event. Hundreds of bishops gathered, imperial pageantry,
Yes, Council of
solemn
Nicaea.
declarations.
Yes.
But behind the spectacle, the reality was stark. Truth was being manufactured under political pressure. Decisions were being made not because one argument was more convincing, but because one faction had imperial backing. Even the choice of wording in the creed was shaped by calculation, vague enough to allow broad agreement, but sharp enough to exclude Arius.
Listen.
That balancing act was not theology. It was politics. And yet, the outcome would be treated as holy for centuries. The aftermath of Nicaea also shows how little the council solved. Instead of ending disputes, it deepened them. Within a few years, Arianism continued to spread, especially among bishops in the eastern provinces.
Listen.
Constantine himself, eager to keep peace, shifted his stance and allowed some exiled Arians to return. His sons, who ruled after him, favored Arian sympathies at various points. The empire lurched back and forth between Nicene and Arian positions for decades. Councils were called again and again to restate, revise, or overturn decisions. This constant instability proves that...
Listen, do you hear how hard poor, exiled, alone, and afraid people fought power for their faith? Are y'all listening to that? They fought power for their faith, not using it as a weapon, not trying to hurt anybody with it, not trying to force anybody with it, wanting to be free in what they believed. They fought power for thousands of years. Just like Africa did. Just like our ancestors did. The only way we survive the tyranny of oppression of the master was because the Most High that they took from us had already instilled that in our DNA. It came from your ancestry. That's why you were able to survive it. That's why every single one of you ain't out here acting like them or killing them. But the sad part about it is we're going to kill each other. That's sad. That's the saddest part about it. We willing to kill each other. We even willing to kill each other for the for the master's God. And I got a news flash for y'all. Heaven started in Africa. Everything started in Africa. If you don't have no love for what looks like you, you ain't nowhere near close to God.
Of Nicaea.
Donald Trump is portraying himself as a religious savior. He says election day will
I flipped, y'all. I pushed the wrong down. I hope my video don't. Let me go into my history, because I'm hoping it don't go back. Okay.
Nicaea was not the final word of God, but the opening shot in a long political struggle. The so-called eternal truth kept changing depending on who sat on the throne. There is also the irony of Constantine's own life.
Listen.
Though he shaped the course of Christian doctrine, he delayed baptism until his deathbed. For most of his reign, he participated in pagan ceremonies and honored traditional Roman gods. His conversion, while political...
Don't tell me Constantine was a fence sitter. He straddled the fence. Don't tell me. Don't tell me that the ruler which brought Christianity together straddled the fence.
The useful was never wholehearted. This raises an unsettling point. The man most responsible for defining the central doctrines of Christianity may not have believed them in the way nations imagined.
Wow.
His use of religion was instrumental, not devotional. Yet his decisions left a legacy that
he, Constantine, Donald Trump, Hitler, judgmental Christians. Listen, he didn't even believe in Christianity the way the people that he took it away from did. Just like the colonizer didn't believe in the God that Africans believed in. It didn't benefit him to do that. It didn't benefit them to have us strong and powerful and faithful and reliant on the God that we knew was protecting us. They took everything away from us. Burned our history, burned our religion, took our bodies. Yeah. And y'all want me to flock to that book. I love the Bible, though. It's an inspirational book. Parts of it. But the world is a contradiction, right? Life is a contradiction.
Believers today still treat as sacred. That contradiction exposes the...
Hey there, folks. Hope you're doing...
I keep on doing that.
The human foundations of doctrines often claim to be divine. If you consider the broader picture, the Council of Nicaea fits a familiar pattern in history.
Yeah.
When religions grow, they attract the attention of rulers. What begins as a grassroots movement often ends up absorbed into the machinery of state. Leaders recognize
Now, what's so interesting about what he said is we got, old Trumpy Dump over there who doesn't even know how to pronounce the books of the Bible. And they say he's the Messiah. Well, no, they say he was sent by God, I mean,
that faith can unify populations, legitimize authority, and suppress dissent. In exchange for patronage and protection, religious leaders agreed to align with political power.
Wow.
Nicaea was simply one.
Don't you see that happening now? I was talking about like the other sector that I watch mostly now is like the religious sector. I'm in the religious sector and the political sectors now, but like the religious sector, when I see the Black pastors, even the Black are talking just like Trump, saying that we deserve everything that we get, and and you need to get up off your ass and you need to do something, like not even realizing like everything you got, blood was shed for it. Every fucking thing you got, your ancestors' blood was shed for it. And you sit up on your ass like you don't have no gratitude. You're not gracious. Aren't Christians supposed to be gracious? You sit up and you side with the master. You sit up and you side with the leader. I'm talking about colonizers, because I'm one of those people that don't believe that all white people are bad people. I don't believe that any race of bad. But we talking about the colonizers right now. See, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about the colonizers. And Black folks helped the colonizers back then, and they helping them now. History always repeats itself. You got parties where one side is more favorable to the other side. Like, Black folks generally vote Democrat, but we still have to realize that this is government, rulers. We elect them, but then get in there, go in there broke, come out rich, go in there working for people, screaming and hollering for the people, and the next thing you know, in a few years, you can't get them to say anything. Can't get them to stand up, but we keep on electing them. Why? Why? You know why? Because we know the cycle is not going to end. Because money rules this, It always has, and it always will. And God ain't got nothing to do with no money. God created everything on this earth to sustain each human being. If they wouldn't be so fucking greedy, the glaciers wouldn't be dying. Floods wouldn't be, these tsunamis wouldn't be happening because you digging, causing earthquakes to happen, like you killing what God gave you for greed. But that is history. That's why history continues to repeat itself, because man goes from one stage in life and then they gradually go further, get some knowledge, start creating AI. This happens over and over and over again. Over and over again. They say this world is billions of years old. It was so many lives beginning and ending. So many ends of the world have happened, and this planet recovers, and here we are again. Same old stuff.
One of the earliest and most dramatic examples of this process. The doctrines crafted there were less about divine mysteries than about the practical work of empire building. Over time, the story of Nicaea was retold as if it were a triumph of faith. But if you peel back the layers, what you see is a political negotiation disguised as theology. The emperor needed unity. The bishops wanted power. Together, they crafted a formula that served both. The creed that emerged was not timeless truth, but a historical artifact shaped by fear of division, ambition, and imperial strategy. Its survival into modern worship is less evidence of divine origin than of the enduring power of political decisions made long ago. An understanding that history reminds us of a deeper truth. What people call eternal faith is often the product of very temporary political needs. The Council of Nicaea also marks a turning point in how religion became entangled with law. Before Constantine, Christians lived under Roman law, but outside of its favor. After Nicaea, Roman law and Christian doctrine began to intertwine. Heresy, once simply disagreement, became a crime. Exile and confiscation of property were the punishments for those who resisted the creed.
For some of y'all gonna realize who the gods are, who the elect are. You're gonna realize who you've been worshiping all along and what system you've been playing into. You're gonna find out that you haven't been walking a narrow path at all. You've been on the path most traveled throughout history. Following the master's plan.
That meant theology was no longer a matter of conscience. It was a matter of legal obligation. This integration of belief and law gave rulers extraordinary leverage over their subjects. Loyalty to the state could be tested by loyalty to doctrine. That kind of control had no precedent in earlier pagan religions, where diversity of worship was usually tolerated as long as political loyalty remained intact. Christianity, after Nicaea, became uniquely intolerant because belief itself had been turned into a legal boundary. The way Constantine managed the council also reveals the mechanics of empire. He convened more than 300 bishops, but they were not free citizens meeting as equals.
Wow.
They were his guests, housed at imperial expense, dependent on his hospitality. Their travel costs were paid by the state. They dined at banquets hosted by the emperor himself. These gestures created...
What's so interesting is Trump is doing that now with pastors, Black ones. You got this group of Black Black MAGA or whatever, and their pastors and stuff. They coon for Trump all over the country, all over the world. They said one pastor did a YouTube video or something. One of the pastors, I'm not gonna say his name, is right on the tip of my tongue too. I'm not gonna say his name, but they say he had a YouTube video and Trump reached out to him. He didn't really have a church. It was all social media, right? It's still all basically social media. They said the most in donations that he would get before, I think they said like $2,000 or something a month, right? They said that Trump's people reached out to him and wanted him to speak at a convention, at a rally or something, because he was cooning for Trump, right? He did this rally. He got all of these white people following him, getting all of this money. He was able to get some sort of grant from the government, from Trump. No, now he's building a church and all of this stuff, and he's benefiting from what he's doing. This is all self-gratuitous, even with some of the pastors. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows don't nobody see God in Trump. Everybody knows that this is a despicable human being. Everybody. Even the evangelicals said that how could he before he started cooning to them, right? They talked about him. Oh, he's the worst. Da, 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 da. All he had to do was start saying what they wanted to hear, and he did it. Just like Constantine. Just like Constantine. He did it. So he got the church on his side. Because before the evangelicals were criticizing him. And listen, he even went further. He got the Republicans on his side. Not because they respected him either. Because all of them talked shit about him. All of them. All of them talk shit about him, right? He gets the Republicans on his side because he gets their donors on his side. Their communities. He says what the people want to hear, not what the politicians been saying. He said, and he ain't scared to say it. But see, the Trump, he's like got a little Napoleon complex kind of syndrome thing going on. We know a few people like that, you know. With him, this is an act for him, a show, but his ego is involved. This is like his show, The Apprentice or something. You fired, you fired, you fired. It's an act for him. But he's a hateful person too. Not very intelligent. He has all of these like insecurities, you know, about Black people, especially smart Black people. He kind of like the dumb ones, the ones that'll coon, you know, and go all over, or the greedy ones. The ones that don't care about what their ancestors died for, that they just gonna. And I'm not saying that you need to go along because you Black. This is about morality, you know? And it's kind of like, you know, you got these people saying that they're Christian, they're evangelicals, they're higher than everybody else, and they blessing weapons so they can kill us. They taking their weapons to church so they can kill us with them. I was watching a video and this man said he was an evangelical. He said, I say, F it. If they won't start it, now we supposed to be the most violent, most evil, most demonic. We the right. We you know, you aliens. You need to be build a wall. All you the bottom of the barrel. You won't even start a war. So this evangelical, he says, we should just go on in there and start it. You got Trump supporters saying, you know, give us the green light and we're going to go snatch them out their houses. Black folks are outnumbered still. So you know damn well if you outnumbered by bodies, you outnumbered by weapons too. That's a myth that everybody in the hood got a Glock. That's a myth that every Black person is a gun-toting, self-defending kind of. But even if you were, you only 13% of the fucking population. That's based upon color. But the wonderful thing about like the real God is the real God got more people on this planet than the ones that the evangelicals or believe in. Because the real God creates movements, you know. Mhm. Like the Underground Railroad movement, which we couldn't have done without some good white folks. Mhm. See, God makes good people in every race. That's the real God. But see, them other people, they louder. You know, they get more attention and they bullies. They're bullies. They just come in and just take what the fuck they want. And the problem with some of us is that we're not dark enough to meet certain people at their level. You know, we just not that. Not saying that we don't have some people that are like that are believers of God. God gives a different assignment to every warrior. It's some people's assignment to be a quiet voice and support. Some people support in front of the scenes. Some people support behind the scenes. Talking about spiritual war here. This is the history. I'm really running my mouth tonight. Maybe I should do a part 2 on this. Because, honey,
gestures created a subtle dependency. Bishops knew that their careers, their safety, even their very survival depended on Constantine's goodwill. In such an atmosphere, how free could their deliberations really be? The council was less a gathering of independent thinkers than an orchestrated assembly in which dissent carried real risks. The creed that emerged was signed not because every bishop was persuaded, but because few dared to openly defy the emperor who held the power of life, death, and exile. Another revealing element is how the council erased the diversity of Jesus' image. Before Nicaea, different communities held very different views of who he was.
Listen to this about a ruler. Now, everybody's, they get mad at me. I'm gonna say it again. She says she don't believe that God wrote the Bible. She says she don't believe. She the devil. They had to decide on how Jesus was gonna be. Why the ruler get to decide the Bible?
Some saw him as a prophet, others as a teacher of wisdom, others as a cosmic redeemer. The Gospels themselves reflect that diversity, with John presenting a very different figure than Mark. At Nicaea, that diversity was collapsed into a single official version. Jesus as fully divine, equal to the Father, eternal and uncreated. That definition excluded all other understandings. The richness of early Christianity, its debates and experiments, was narrowed down to one formula that would be enforced with state power. The cost of unity was the loss of diversity.
Did you hear that? The cost of unity was the loss of diversity. So true. So true.
Narrowing is still felt today, as centuries of alternative voices were silenced in the name of orthodoxy. What is striking is how easily political language and theological language blurred at the council. When bishops declared Jesus of the same substance as the Father, they were also declaring their own unity under the emperor's rule.
Wow.
When they condemned Arius, they were not just resolving a theological dispute. They were signaling loyalty to Constantine's vision of a unified empire. Theology and politics fused into one, with each reinforcing the other. That fusion meant that religious dissent became indistinguishable from political rebellion.
Wow.
It also meant that the church could no longer claim independence from worldly power. Its doctrines were crafted in council halls under imperial oversight, not discovered in prayer or revelation. The way the council treated Arius himself is also telling. He was not allowed to continue teaching freely after the council. His books were ordered burned, and he was exiled. These measures were not acts of theological censorship and suppression. By trying to erase Arius, the council showed its true nature as an instrument of power. If the creed had truly been self-evident, why resort to force? The resort to exile and book burning reveals the insecurity of the settlement.
Now, what's interesting is that we fought for our right to have our own freedom and religion too. And that was beat out of us, taken away from us. And this religion was forced upon us. Christianity, right? We couldn't believe in what we believed in. It was demonic. You know, you worshiping false gods. The kings over here got to decide who God was because it benefit them, right? And everything that we truly knew and loved was taken away from us. Yeah. Now we're giving it away. You don't have to take nothing. I'm just going to agree to believe what you believe because you said it's so. I don't get to think freely for myself. I have to go along with the, 2.6 billion people that go along with you, but they all going in tens of thousands of different ways too. Yeah. Okay.
Truth that must be enforced by burning books and silencing voices is not truth. It is control. And that control served the needs of Constantine's empire far more than the search for spiritual insight. The long aftermath of Nicaea demonstrates how...
Oh no, Blue, it's not a Detroit pastor. It's not a pastor from Detroit.
Fragile political settlements in religion can be. For decades after 325, the empire was torn by theological disputes. Different emperors favored different sides. Councils were called to revise or reaffirm the Nicene formula.
Again.
Bishops were exiled and reinstated depending on who was in power. Whole regions swung between Nicene and Arian sympathies. This constant instability shows that the council was never about discovering truth, but about enforcing temporary consensus. And yet, over time, the Nicene position became entrenched.
Okay, y'all.
Not because it was inherently truer, but because it eventually gained the backing of the most enduring structures of power.
Listen.
Orthodoxy triumphed not by reason, but by persistence and enforcement. Looking at Nicaea in the wider context of Roman history makes its political character even clearer.
Now,
the Roman Empire had always...
Listen to what he's saying. The Roman Empire, okay? Now, the Roman Catholic Church holds books that they won't even allow anyone from the public to see. They hold history of probably thousands of religions, of beliefs that are different than Christianity. They hiding it from everybody. Why? Why hide? And why would God want to hide knowledge? Why would the God of the Bible want to hide knowledge from its own creation? Why would the God of the Bible make any of his children slaves to a man or men or a system or a book? Why would the creator God demand that his own children idolize a book? It blows my mind. It blows my mind that human beings really think that God is that small. That God can be encompassed in a book, one book. That's a tiny God.
Thrived by absorbing local religions into its system. Conquered peoples were usually allowed to keep their gods, as long as they also honored the emperor and Roman rituals. Christianity was different because it refused compromise. By the early 4th century, its growth had made it impossible to ignore. Constantine's genius was not to destroy it, but to harness it. The council was his way of turning a fragmented movement into a unified institution loyal to him. Instead of many sects pulling in different directions, he created a single orthodoxy that could serve as the religious backbone of the empire. In doing so, he transformed Christianity from a persecuted minority into the imperial faith. But that transformation came at the cost of its independence. The very choice of the word creed is revealing. The Creed of Nicaea was a statement that had to be recited, memorized, and affirmed. It turned faith into a formula, a set of words repeated as proof of loyalty.
Are you listening to that? Scripture. Scripture that you have to follow daily. Not organically, like God is. No. You have to follow words that man wrote in a book for you when God has already told you have a personal relationship with him. But you got to have some man tell you. And see, the thing about it is, I often think like, why don't people like, if the Bible is true, right? And the words in the Bible are God's words. Why is it that God doesn't even state the Bible as one of his creations or scripture? Because God tells you, right? Y'all saying that God tells you everything that he creates, even though we know that it's far more things that we've seen in this world that aren't even documented in the Bible, that aren't even mentioned, that aren't even referenced. Y'all know what? I'm going to end it right here. I got my timestamp. And I'm done. I will see y'all hopefully tomorrow. Well, you know what? I'm going to find a way to do part 2 tomorrow. Try to do it. I don't know what time. I'm going to try to do it earlier than I've done it this time because I really want to get into some of the other stuff about Trump and how all of this pretty much correlates with the history. You know, you got to know the history. You have to know the history. You said, are you going to break down the religions or just Christianity? Oh, no. We're going to break down the religions, Blue, because Hinduism is documented as the oldest religion on earth. A lot of things started in Asia, and a lot of people don't even know that. In India, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody credits everything to one part of the world because that's where life started, right? As far as we know, the oldest documented human being found. But even biblically, back in time, like back before, like even they say even Adam and Eve, the Adam and Eve story was created, which was, they say, about 6,000 years ago. Some say 6, some say 5. So I just went all the way up to 6. They say 6,000 years ago. But this planet is billions of years old, right? Can you imagine how much knowledge? Because clearly the Adam and Eve story couldn't be, we've already gone through all of that. I've played the audio and stuff. The Adam and Eve story could not have been an original story. There's African stories that resemble the story of creation, the same way the Bible does, that are thousands of years older than the creation story. Thousands of years older. So this story was told over and over again. So, yeah, okay. I'm gonna talk to y'all tomorrow. You said, if you listen to just going, you said if you've been given the knowledge. No, this topic is about what I'm talking about, and that's another thing. I'm gonna say this to you know, whoever's watching, like, I'm tired of that. Like, I keep on saying that's never where I want to be again, and it's not, you know? So people could take things the way that they want it. Listen, I will I'll see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a blessed and beautiful rest of your. You said that is what I'm saying. No, I'm not speaking to anyone personally. I'm not. You know, but the thing about it is, I'm going to tell you something. When I hear something, and if it doesn't resonate within me, and no names are said, I don't even think it's about me. You know what I'm saying? Because it hasn't resonated. I haven't felt like that's me, especially if somebody hasn't said my name, you know? I just don't think it's about me. And I'm not trying to take shots, but even if I was, it wouldn't make any damn differences out my mouth right now. But I'm serious. Like, I don't, if I didn't do it, if I didn't say it, if it ain't, it's not about me. So listen, y'all have a blessed and beautiful rest of y'all night, okay? And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.